Helldivers 2 just got some massive developer updates, and even some updates from the CEO himself. We also have a brand new battle pass to talk about, and some of the new controversies happening with the meta, as well as the subreddit and a whole bunch more. Additionally, we do have some armor updates and some updates coming to the armor system, as well as the enemy spawns, the enemy armor, and the lack thereof the ability to actually take down certain enemies. We got a ton to talk about. What's up, world? Should be back in the video touching on all things Helldivers 2. Okay, so first up, let's just jump into that recent update with the armors, as well as the armor types, the enemy spawns, as well as all that there. So first up, we do have a community manager coming out to disclose recent information and adjustments and their philosophy on that all there. Now this statement is quite long, but I'll try to break down most of the important stuff. So this is Spitz, the community manager, that goes on to say, I want to take a moment this afternoon to let you know that we've heard your concerns over the last few days regarding enemy spawns, enemy armor, and the ability to take down those enemies. As they said before, their teams are always taking in player feedback and looking how to tweak the game, make it enjoyable and fair. They want to confirm that they're currently looking at changes to the spawn rates, health pools of heavy enemies, and they're attempting to spread them out to prevent large spikes of tougher enemies at the same time. Now this should go out in a future hotfix, so there's probably not going to be a big patch, but just a minor hotfix for that. They did go on here to say that in addition, they forgot to mention that the EAT-17 and recoilless rifle no longer suffer from a 50% damage decrease. This is when hitting an armored enemy at a glance angle that deflects the shot. So they did say combined with that, in the upcoming adjustments to the health and the spawn rates, this should make larger enemies a bit less common. And instead of spawning more chaff enemies to support them, they will allow players to bring them down easily with a single well-placed shot. Now they do hope this will lead to less instances of endless kiting, and players being left without an effective weaponry to take down those harder enemies. Which I am glad the game is so difficult. I really don't like when games get nerfed into the ground or made for just a casual audience. I do think that Helldivers is fairly casual in itself, but I do like the harder PvE style of it, especially on that Helldiver difficulty. However, enemies like the Chargers I do feel like are significantly harder to take down, especially if you aren't using the railgun, which almost does feel like a crutch with that there. Especially me, I like the autocannon, and my autocannon does absolutely horrible against the Chargers unless I get behind them. Which if I have 2 or 3 chasing me at a time, it's actually fairly difficult to get them to space out and actually get behind them. So I am hoping we're seeing a little bit of leeway there, just maybe even a well-placed shot above the legs. Or at least make other weaponry like the Diligence rifle actually do damage to these enemies. I do feel like that rifle doesn't do any damage, especially compared to the premium battle pass weaponry, which is like the flame weapons, or their incendiary shotgun, which I feel does a lot of damage to the Chargers that I just don't have yet because I'm not buying the battle pass, or at least didn't buy the premium version of that battle pass. So while I hope that they keep the game hard and they do keep certain things tough, I do hope we get a bit better tools to take down these enemies, especially for the skill level there, or skill ceiling and skill gap. As right now, it feels like you can't really use your skill to an advantage on those certain aspects there, especially when you're having to kite so many enemies, including Bite Titans. Again, glad they're looking at all this. I do hope they still keep the game somewhat hard, while also providing those tools for us to take those enemies down. Which kind of leads us on to the recent controversies. We had a ton of Discord moderators, community members, and even developers come out to give their piece. We had one of the more controversial ones here where the moderator of the official Helldivers Discord came out and said this, where they wanted to say, man, watching you all cry amuses me so much. Now before you get your pitchforks out, this person has since been demoted from the moderator rank. We had a few other postings that I'll go over with the CEO commenting on those. Or we had a developer coming out here saying that I'm feeding a rage a little bit here for my own entertainment, just so you know. We haven't nerfed anything into the ground, I just think it's a little too early to pretend like the game is figured out. We made 2 of the most brainless playstyles less viable, and brought the guns that are under and overperforming more in line with the rest. And they went on further to clarify that they don't want to make sweeping changes and things of that nature. However, I do agree with some of this, but I also disagree because the other weaponry does feel like it's lacking so much in comparison. And I still feel like, even though the railgun got nerfed, I still feel like it's going to be taken for those Chargers, especially on the bug missions. Seeing as my autocannon doesn't really do armor damage, and it feels like a lot of the other things don't really kind of fall in line with that there. Now there is definitely a decent amount of balance, however, especially when we went over on the last video where the PlayStation was getting more damage, or more damage to other players, or more damage to other enemies. Essentially, it only takes 2 to 3 railgun shots to actually take down a Bite Titan, or at least that's what people are saying depending on the host. Whereas on PC, I can shoot a full clip of autocannon and it essentially isn't going to take it down because I've already taken out the bottom section. So I do hope they kind of balance the stratagems, especially those ones that you call in weapons for and have a backpack for. because it seems like almost like a Diablo 4 move where they nerfed vulnerability, but everybody still takes vulnerability. So yeah, they nerfed the railgun, but it still seems like most people are still going to take the railgun just because of how much better it is in comparison. So while I do agree that they should have nerfed this weapon, they also should have buffed a lot of the other weapons, and quite significantly, at least give us the tools to take down those harder enemies, because the missions are still quite hard. Now, we do have Piles, the CEO, actually addressing all of this controversy. He said, "We are aware of this and have taken action internally to educate our developers on how to represent the organization. This is not the message the studio stands behind. We are always working to make an enjoyable experience in the community that we can." He went on further to say, "Hi all, yes, this is inexcusable behavior and we are providing education on how not to behave this way when representing the studio." He also said that he's extremely disappointed with a lot of this behavior with the recent developers and the community manager kind of giving their takes on certain things. He also had a further longer statement here, but it's essentially about the same altogether, where he did go on to say further here that as for the balance patch and the opinions surrounding it, we are actively reading as much as possibly can. We'll take everything into consideration and then discuss things internally. Obviously, all this kind of sucks right now. This always happens with a new game that kind of blows up and has some sort of balancing issues. Again, I'm sure they'll figure things out, and I'm sure they'll get things under wraps. The team seems very active, and I do appreciate that they want to keep things difficult, or at least keep the difficulty at a max. Again, I do appreciate a PvE game that actually provides a challenge. However, I do still think they need to work on a little bit of the balance stuff there and get that in line more so that we have the tools to at least take these things on. Moving on to some brighter news, we do have a new Battle Pass launching on March 14th. This is the Cutting Edge War Bond. And just like the recent Halo, the Battle Pass actually doesn't disappear after it's there. I do think this is good because there is actual weapons inside the Battle Pass. So just because there's actual physical items and not just skins, I am glad that the Battle Pass, it doesn't disappear and actually stays there. So don't worry on that. Even when this new Battle Pass comes in, you can still work on the other one if you want some of those incendiary weapons. And as I said, for this new Battle Pass, there will be lightning spitting guns and experimental armors and potentially even more. Now, we do actually have details on that Battle Pass here, where they went on to say the EX series prototypes. We have the EX00, the EX16, and the EX03. The most significant one here says includes a rubber underlayer for insulation. Seemingly so, these are things that you can add to your armor. This one says the prototype wires operate at a shocking 400,000 volts. Again, as I said, it's an underlayer for insulation, so I'm assuming that when mobs melee you. There's also one with the prototype 16 that electric arc generates a strong magnetic field. So this one more so surrounds the player itself. Some decent armor upgrades, and I'm assuming that these are what are tackling the recent armor kind of concerns. We also have some brand new weapons like the LAS-16 Sickle, a sweet laser rifle that fires short bursts. All it can do is overheat, or you can shove a new heatsink in there. We have the SG-8P Punisher Plasma. It's a modified Punisher shotgun with plasma rounds. And then here we also have the ARC-12 Blitzer, which is a close range lightning, or you can even charge it up to fire powerful bolts. They do clarify how this is good for taking out multiple targets. And there's also a new stun grenade, the G23 stun, which, yeah, from our previous video where we talked about the stuns, those are finally actually coming into this Battle Pass. Where they also have an LAS-7 dagger pistol, which looks to be a sort of constant laser beam coming out of the actual weapon. Again, all this does drop on March 14th, so we are getting a decent amount of content within that Battle Pass. We also have a big major order update, where they're asking all Helldivers to immediately liberate Tien Quan, which looks to be that once we do liberate that and complete that major order, we actually will get those mechs. So here they do have a little poster set up. This is not a drill. Our factories are under attack. They're halting the output of the actual mechs, so it's kind of cool to role playing with it and showing off that there. And so yeah, once we liberate that section, we will actually get the mechs. That major order does end in 3 days, however, we mostly just started it. Hopefully everything cools down and everything does come to fruition with all this stuff there. And we are getting a ton of content, so hopefully that does kind of sidetrack people and get them away from all this toxicity. And hopefully my later videos are on a much more positive note. Overall, though, that should about cover for today's video. If you like, subscribe. And until the next one, deuces.